especially which maybe we see more adversity thrown CJ Stroud's way because he deserves a ton of credit. And I think that he is one of the biggest parts of why the Texans had a great turnaround last season. But you're right. I think it is a different story when the wheels start to come off. And I think you look down the division, you see somebody like Trevor Lawrence. I feel like he's handled it pretty well. If you're talking about disasters and somebody who won like every single stage of his career before coming to the Jags, wasn't Trevor Lawrence on like some unbeaten streak through high school all the way to like college?
Oh,
So I
yeah.
feel like the way that he handled himself through all of that like Urban Meyer nonsense, I feel like it speaks volumes to his character. So we've got a lot of good young quarterbacks in this division. CJ Stroud is certainly one of them. But okay, so let's address the question head on. Do we think CJ Stroud can have as good of a season as he did last year?
Oh, as good of a season? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a tough one. He led the NFL in passing yardage last year and touchdown to interception ratio. Only Joe Montana and Tom Brady have done that over the last 50 years. So that is a historic season. So
Right.
you could also make the argument on the flip side, okay, well, now they have Stephon Diggs. I think we'll see maybe a touch of regression, but regression is it's a powerful word. You hear regression, like, oh, regression? Well, it's like maybe just a slight step back, and I know he has more weapons, but also, he surprised a lot of people last season. Right now, opposing defenses have a season's worth of tape on him, and there will be adjustments made defensively to try and contain him. I still think he's going to have a great season, and yes, he has more weapons, but to top what we saw last year when he was surprising other teams and especially everyone who covered the NFL, I don't think it's a stretch to say, okay, maybe there's a slight step back. If he does even better than he did last year, then that's going to be a remarkable season. But I think maybe the market is just a little too hot on CJ Stroud, just a touch.
Yeah, I think to follow that same logic, so CJ Stroud had this like historic season for a young quarterback, or not even a young quarterback, any quarterback. 23 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and the Texans won 10 games. So according to the books, their win total is set at the same thing, 9.5, juice the over at -145. So Jenks, I think my question is, if CJ Stroud even takes a small step back, can the Texans still win 10 games?
Oh, man. Yeah, they can. It's all relative, right? Because when you hear step back, it's like, oh, whoa, what do you mean? It's like, okay, he could throw for 2 fewer touchdowns and still have a fantastic season. So I think they can. It's -145. The more I think about this bet, the more I think, okay, I think they could maybe get this. I do worry about their schedule. That's something that I mentioned before,
Yeah.
whereas if you look at who they played this season, I mean, it is a murderer's row. 5 division champions, 7 playoff teams, 11 games against teams with winning records. And you mentioned, I believe last hour, that, okay, but early on their schedule has a lot of winnable games, so I think they could probably get to the over here, but I do think it's going to be close just because, A, their schedule, and I also think this division is going to be a lot more competitive than people think.
Yeah, I definitely agree to that because it's a lot of young quarterbacks and a lot of teams that are kind of on the come up. Like maybe last year they were the laughing stock and everybody, takes their shots. But Anthony Richardson is back for the Colts. Obviously, CJ Stroud for the Texans. Will Levis in a new offense for the Titans, I think maybe can at least keep it close with some of these division teams. And then the Jags, who still have some really good pieces. I think for me, the way that you look at the schedule is, okay, so there is a bet that is plus 750. The Texans to start the year 5-0. Could we make this make sense? Because obviously it's plus 750. It is long plus money for a reason because it's difficult to win 5 straight games in the NFL against anybody. But I'm looking at the opponent. So they start the season on the road at the Colts. That is a team that Anthony Richardson is coming off an injury. It feels like maybe a team that doesn't start off the season hot. Then they host the Bears, which I know a lot of people are super high on the Bears, but CJ Stroud put up massive numbers as a rookie quarterback. We have yet to see Caleb Williams even, throw an NFL pass, and we've already anointed him, the next big thing. Then they go on the road to the Vikings. I feel like that's very much a winnable game. Then they host the Jags. Then they host the Bills, which should be interesting because that's the Stephon Diggs revenge game, if you
Mm-hmm.
like that angle at all. And then they have the lowly Patriots. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's the first 6 games of the season. Do you think that's a logical bet to make at plus 750, the Texans, to start the year 5-0?
That's super, super difficult to do in the National Football
Yeah.
League. But at the same time, for that sort of value and a team that has, I think value-wise, yes, why not? It's worth a little sprinkle. I would put a ton of money on it. But when you're talking about a club that has an easier schedule early on, that certainly has plenty of talent, and you're getting plus 750, not likely to happen. But yeah, worth a little bit of your money, sure.
Yeah, because a little refresher course on how the NFL sometimes works out. As you're looking down the schedule, you say, oh, these are the winnable games, these are the losable games. We see this all the time. Like, it would not shock me if the Texans lost to, like, the Patriots, just because that's how the NFL works. You can't just go down the schedule and say, well, these are the wins, these are the losses. That's not really how it works. The NFL is the ultimate game of parity for the most part. So it's plus 750 for a reason. Other bets on the Texans, they are the favorites to win the AFC South at even money, to win the AFC 8-1, to win the Super Bowl. They are plus 1,600 to make the playoffs, minus 200, nose plus 165. Jenks, do any of these bets catch your eye?
I think maybe I would look at, I don't know. I can't decide. I do like a player prop. I think that's the one thing that I'm on, which is Joe Mixon. I think that's one thing that maybe stands out to me if we're looking at all these bets here. Because his over, if you're looking at his rushing yards, is 850 in a hook, right? So it's juice to the under, minus 120. And I don't know why I have this thing in my head like, ooh, juice to the under, that's a problem. It's not a problem if you like the bet, right? Then you're just getting value on the over. But if you look at the Texans last year, Chelsea, and they just could not run the ball at all. They averaged 3.7 yards per carry. But what I like about this bet is, okay, yeah, they didn't rush the ball well last year. They have an upgrade at running back, that's for sure. They lost Devin Singletary, huge upgrade with Joe Mixon. And then if you look at that O-line, there was only one player. That was Shaq Mason, who played all 17 games for the Texans last year. Laramie Tunsil sat out at times. So did Juice Scruggs. So did Titus Howard. So now if that O-line stays healthy and you've got an upgrade at running back and you've got so many receiving threats and what should be a high-powered offense, I think that opens the door for Joe Mixon to have a big season, or at least bigger than 850 and a half yards. So when you're getting that at even money, that's a value play I like. When you look at this offense, and Stephon Diggs in particular, is there any worry that because there are so many receivers on this offense, you know how Stephon Diggs is, he's sort of mercurial where if he's not getting his touches, he gets upset. There's no questioning his talent, but is that a concern at all?
Yes. Is the short answer. Yes, but I would respond with this. Like, yes, that's a concern, but also I've been out there at training camp. I've been watching, and we had this kind of a debate with some of the other hosts at the station and some of the other media here in Houston. Like, who's their number one wide receiver? Like, Stephon Diggs is clearly the most accomplished. Nico Collins just arrived kind of on the scene with a breakout year last year, and Tank Dell is on the come up. Like, he's got the least body of work, but he might be the most talented of all three. Who's the number one receiver? Look, I've been at training camp. It's Stephon Diggs. Period. So like my response would be, throw him the damn ball. You know what I mean? Like I've come to sort of reject lately that just because Stephon Diggs has had a couple of blow-ups with teammates, that he's necessarily on the wrong side of history or on the wrong side of the argument. He's pretty damn good. Throw him the ball.